welcome back everyone. This is Janelle with Lasting Impression Horsemanship. I'm going over the different types of yields that I do with the horses and kind of where I start when I teach the horses and the order I go and what I kind of establish as I'm working with them when I get them in. The next one I'm going to do is the back, teaching them how to back. And when I do it, I want to teach them how to back correctly. A lot of times what can happen is horses are reluctant to back up, and when they're reluctant to back up, what happens is they'll throw their head up in the air and then their backs howl out, and then they'll start backing up and they'll start dragging their back feet, and then there'll be these drag marks in the sand as they back up. And I don't want that. What I want my horse to do when I ask them to back up is I want them to put their head down, lift their back up, and I want them to lift their back feet up and pull themselves backwards and not push themselves backwards with their front feet. When their head's up in the air like that, they can't use their hindquarters to pull themselves backwards. They have to push themselves backwards with their front end, and that's not the correct way to back up. We need them to use their hindquarters and not the front end. So in order to teach your horse to back up correctly, what you need to do is the first thing you kind of have to do is to teach them how to lower their head. So he's not great at this yet, but it's usually fairly easy to teach a horse how to do this. So what I do is I start by grabbing this knot here, or clip, either or, doesn't matter. And I'm just going to put a very slight feel on it and ask him to lower his head. And then if he doesn't lower it right away, I'm going to start shaking his head back and forth here and loosen up his poll there. And he lowered his head just a fraction of a bit. And the moment he did that, I released. And that was his reward for giving into that pressure a little bit. So I'm going to ask again. I'm going to add the shake to the head and wait till he comes and gives in. There's the lower of the head. Good boy. And then I release, and that's his reward. So I'm going to ask again. Good. And you see how he's getting closer and closer about this and coming faster and faster. So I'm just doing it where, good. So I didn't even have to shake that time. It was just over a nice soft feel. So ask again. All right, now I'm going to have to shake. There, he came and lowered it. Good boy. And then I'm just going to scratch him, rub him, whatever to reward him. He's one of those horses he's got the personality of being lazy, and he's like, I'll do it, but what's in it for me? Okay, so he's kind of one that would be very food motivated. So he is one that does good about learning with treats, but I don't tend to like to do that because then they get where they're always looking for treats. Okay, but if you have a thing that they're kind of being really difficult about learning, or they're giving you like trouble with, go ahead and use the treats to your advantage to help get them to understand what it is that you're asking them to do and motivate them to want to do it. And then you can slowly like get it so they're not expecting a treat every single time you do it. Okay, so I have nothing against treats by any means. It's just I want a treat to be a treat, and I don't want my horse to be looking for the treat and expecting the treat. I want it to be a treat to them. So I want them to be surprised when they get a treat. Okay, so if I were to ask him, so come on, I need him to come forward. Good. All right, so if I were to ask him again to come and lower his head, good boy. So I put a little feel, good, and he's lowering his head. Ask again, lowering his head. All right, good boy. Again, you're asking me, you're probably wondering why this is so important for the hindquarter or the backing up. Again, he can't back up correctly unless his head is down. So I need him to teach him what it means to put his head down on a soft feel with the halter and rope. Okay. So once he learns what this means, which he's doing actually remarkably well, better than this is the best he's done so far, but that's the whole point of horse training is consistency and just continuing to work with them. So he's understanding what this now means to do that. You can also teach them with pressure above their head here, between their ears. So if I were to go put my hand in between his ears here on his pole, there's that little bone in between their ears. You can put pressure on it and then kind of squeeze it, and then as you squeeze it, they'll lower their head and you completely release like he did now. If I have a horse that's still reluctant to put their head down with just the pressure of the knot and shaking their head, what I'll end up doing is, instead of pulling harder down on them, I'll go ahead and incorporate the second method here to lower their head, but still ask with the knot, and then ask with both of them at the same time. So I'll start asking with the knot here, and then I'll incorporate the one above the head. And then when they do lower it, I'm going to release both of them at the same exact time and let them know that that was the correct answer. Okay. So, that is what I would do to, if you have a horse that's not getting it with lowering their head off of just a nice soft feel and kind of rocking their head back and forth there. Okay. That would be the next step I would go to there. Alrighty. And then as far as teaching them to back, then, sorry, come on, Ty. As far as teaching them to back them, once we got them so they understand what it means to lower their head with a soft feel here, okay, so he's understanding what this means, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure he lowers his head, and I'm going to put my pressure, and I'm going to pull it down kind of towards his knees, okay, and I'm going to ask him to back up, and once he takes a step backwards, I'm going to stop and release and let him know that's the correct answer, okay, and I'm going to keep my I'm going to keep it very soft, okay? I'm going to just keep kind of 2 fingers, just enough that he can feel it and knows that I'm asking him to move his feet, and I'm not going to get super forceful with it because that's going to stimulate that opposition reflex. If I continue to push harder with it, he's just going to push against me, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask him, give his head, I'm going to pull back towards his knees. If he's not backing yet, I'm going to then, instead of, you're a good boy. So if he's not backing yet, all I'm going to do is I'm going to take my stick here, I'm going to tap him in the chest, okay? And I'm going to ask him to take a step backwards. And you see how he took a step backwards, and I'm just going to stop and reward him. And that is his reward for backing up. So when I'm teaching a horse to do this, I'm just asking for 1 step, and asking them to back up. So I'm going to lift, pull backwards, and then I'm going to tap the chest, okay, and I'm going to make sure that head stays down when he's doing it. And you see how he's backed up twice, and he hasn't drug his back feet when he's backed up. He's picked up those back feet both times that we've asked him to back up. So if I ask him again, back. Good boy. So there, that last one he kind of drug, but for the most part, he did pretty good about picking his back feet up when we were asking him to back. But again, make sure that you just don't increase your pressure here to get him to back up. What I would do is I'd go here, ask him to back, and then go tapping on the chest. Maybe add a cluck in there to ask him to back up and go from there, okay? And you can do it from both sides as well. Come on. It's important to do it from both sides. And back him here. Same thing. Lower your head as you back up. So here he's trying to turn. And another thing is if he gets where he's starting to turn like that and yield his hindquarters, be aware of what your shoulders are doing. So when I was asking him to do this, here, I'll show you guys. When I was asking him to do this, I had my body like this, and I was asking him to back, and my shoulders were facing this way, okay? So if I wanted him to back straight, my shoulders need to be straight when I'm asking him to back, okay? So he started this step that way with his hindquarters. The reason he did that is because my energy was telling him to turn his hindquarters that way, because my shoulders and my energy was pushing his hindquarters away from me, okay? Where if my body would have been straight here and my shoulders stayed straight this way, he would have continued to back up straight. So I'm going to ask him to bring his head down, back up. There you go. And you see how he stayed straight there when we started backing? It's because my shoulders stayed straight there. So it's very important to be aware of what your body language is necessarily telling them as well, and where your feet are pointing, and being aware of your body position too. And that's going to be very important when you're just plain working with your horse all the time, okay? I highly encourage people to videotape themselves when they're working with their horse. You might watch this and be like, okay, yeah, I totally understand this, and I make things look really easy when I'm doing stuff. I can maneuver my stick and rope and handle it and be able to not trip over stuff and everything, and I make it look super easy. Until you get in this position here and are physically doing it yourself, you don't realize how difficult it really is, okay? I do it, it's second nature to me now because I've done it so long, but it's not when you're just first starting out. It takes practice, and don't be afraid to look like a fool and trip over everything and stuff. We've all been there. It's gonna happen, all right? So be aware of what your body is doing, and recording yourself is very good because you can look back and see what your body language is doing and what your body is telling your horse, and then you can compare it to the video that I'm doing here. So say your horse is backing and he just keeps backing crooked, okay? And like I said, it's got a lot to do with what your shoulders are doing and where your energy's pointing, okay? So say you're asking your horse to back up and you're like, I think I got all the steps right. I don't understand why my horse isn't backing straight. And then if you go back and you watch the video of you doing it and you're like, there it is. It's right there. My shoulders are turned here. My body is turned here. And I'm telling him subtly with my body language to move his body away from me. So doing that and videotaping yourself is very beneficial and can be very helpful when you are trying to be like an amateur or novice and do stuff yourself, training your horse yourself. It can be very beneficial. So I highly encourage people to do so, is to go ahead and record themselves, go back, look at the video, and then go ahead and try again. Okay, so that is very beneficial there. Otherwise, that would be teaching the horse how to back up correctly. The importance of them backing correctly is teaching them just to use their body correctly from the very beginning. I could teach my horse how to back up, and I do teach them how to back up like this, by maybe tapping the rope here and like shaking the rope to get them to get out of my space and stuff. But I'm going to teach them first what it means, and he knows to lower his head when he sees me shake that. I'm going to teach them first how to do it correctly and use their body correctly. Because if I do it this way and I need them to back up and their head's up in the air and their back's held out and stuff like that, and I teach them a different way of backing, whether it's kind of like shaking the rope to get them to back off, or like tapping the air in front of them to get them to back off and stuff like that. That is perfectly fine to do it, but the only downside to it is, like, pretty much every horse I've known and started working with, the first thing they do is throw their head up in the air, okay? When they throw their head up in the air, the back howls out and they're going to be pushing themselves backwards with their front end, okay? Where if I do it this way, I'm teaching them from the very beginning how to back up correctly, and what I'm asking them to do and how to use their body correctly. And then I already have it, so they're understanding what it is I'm kind of asking them to do. So then if I were to go like this here and be like, hey, I want you to back up, and I put some feel here, he's going to be less likely to want to throw that head way up in the air. You see how he's even coming down now a little bit? So I'm going to try and teach him from the very beginning to be correct doing this stuff. And that is why I'm kind of doing this stuff this way. And like I said, it's perfectly fine to go ahead and teach them that. And eventually they do get to the point where they will back up with their head down. Okay. And it's just getting the resistance out of them to get them to just back up really willingly is what it boils down to, and getting the resistance out. But I just don't want to teach them wrong and have to go back and fix it then later on. So if I can just teach it correctly from the very beginning, it saves time for me later on down the road. Okay. And I'm not going to be able to stand in front of them here and be able to back them up from in front of them if I'm on their back. I'm going to be able to do it from my rein here and ask them to back. So this is going to be more beneficial to me under saddle than what it would be for me to stand in front of them and get them to back up that way. Okay. Not saying that this is not important to be able to move your horse's feet, because it is very important to be able to get them to respect you and have good ground manners. That is very important. But I'm just saying that to get them to back correctly and make it beneficial for me under saddle, that is going to be the best way for me to establish that. So there is just the other yield, which is the drift yield, and I will go over that in the next session. So go ahead and continue to follow along, and we'll see you in the next clip. Thanks.